function that we are going to talk about is called type. And most of the names that Python developers picked are very self-explanatory. So type, for instance, gives you the type of a variable that you have, or type of a value that you pass to it. So let's look at some examples in the shell. So if I want to know what is the type of this value 5, I can simply put that value inside this function type, and you see it turned purple. We have the parentheses at the end, and that is a predefined function. So if you run this one, it's going to tell you this is class integer. So that means 5 is type integer. You can test it with other values. So if I pass 2.5 to it, it's going to give me a float type, because 2.5, as we know, it has a period. It is a float type. And then we are going to try some other stuff. If I have a quotations, and if I pass a string to it, it's going to give me type a string. So this function type allows you to get the type of a value that you pass to it. You can also test it with variables. So right now we have this variable num that is defined, and we can say, okay, what is the type of this variable? And it's going to give us the type of it. So you basically replace that variable num1, with the value of it. It goes and finds it, and then it puts 5 inside type, it sends it to type, and it knows, okay, 5 is type integer, is a numeric value. And then for type variable num2, you can pass it to the type function, and since num2 is 2.5, you're going to get the float type. Okay, so you can test all of that in the shell, and then I want you to come back to the code that you have, and we are going to do the same thing here. So far in the shell, we said, okay, what is the type of num1, or what is the type of 5, and it gave you the type of it. So now let's do the exact same thing here. So I'm going to say, okay, what is the type of num1? What is the type of num2? And let's see if we get the same thing if we put those two lines here inside that code. And in general, if you don't want to see something, you can always comment it instead of deleting it. You can keep them, and you can always have them, just comment them out and then uncomment them whenever you need them. So for now, I'm going to just comment this print, or you can leave it as it is. It's going to show you that line. So it's up to you how you want to see the output. All right, so let's go ahead and run it. So what I expect is I define those two variables, num1 and num2. I have that print statement that shows me the two values that I had. And then I want to see the type of num1 and num2. That is why I have line 13 and 14. I want to see the types. I want to see an integer and a float. Let's go ahead and run it and see what we get. So here we go. The only thing I'm getting, similar to the previous one, is getting the values through that print function. I'm not getting the result from these two lines. Why not? Why I'm not getting the result? It worked when I did it in the shell. It worked when I said, okay, what is the type of num2? It gave me that is type float. Why is not giving me when I'm doing it in the file that I have, in the code that I have? Any ideas? Okay, so the reason behind it is Python actually knows, like when you say type of num1, it goes and finds the type of it, it has it, but you never told it to print it for you. You never told it to display it for you. And it's not going to do it unless you ask it. It follows your instruction. If you don't ask Python to print something, it's not going to do it, right? So if you want to see the type of that variable num, you need to say, I want to print it. I want to see the result. And as you see here, I have a function inside a function, and that is totally fine. So this function gets a type of a value. So you are going to pass this variable num1, which is going to go and find the value 5, puts it there, sends it to function type. It gets the type of that number, that value, and it is type integer. And then integer, that type is going to be printed because you have this print function. If you don't have that print, it's not going to print it for you. It follows your instruction. Same thing with the second one. If you want to see the type, you need to print it. So now let's try to run it again. So save and run. Now I guess the result. I see the output. It was there, but you didn't ask it to print, and it didn't do it. When you did ask it to print, it went through and printed for you. Okay, so just be mindful, if something doesn't show up, that doesn't mean it is not calculated or is not there. Sometimes you're not asking it to be printed, and sometimes you don't need it to be printed. So just be mindful of that if you don't put the print, it is not going to be displayed, right? And that is one of the common problems students have. They go through some calculations and they do everything looks great. It was like, why I'm not seeing anything? Because you never printed it, right? So just be mindful of that. If you need to see something, make sure you print it. So with type, is like, as we talked about, is another predefined functions. As soon as you use it, it turns purple. You need to end it with parentheses. And the way that we are going to use type function is basically just getting the type. So we are going to pass one value to it, and it's going to give us the result of the type of that value. So you can either pass a value directly to it or pass a variable to it. I can have 5 or any other number. -2 is going to give me the type of -2, which is still an integer value, and is going to go through and calculate that for me and show it. Okay, so that is all about type functions. So if you're not sure about the type of a variable, or if you want to make sure you're right, you can always use type function to see the type.